Erased Destiny 2, The Knower. Chapter 8, Visiting Tyrdam. Except for Cyril, the team found the city to be a nice, orderly place. The houses looked almost identical. The roads seemed to be as straight as an arrow, and the cobblestones showed no signs of wear. People were milling around the packages. Ropes were not overgrown with moss, and there was no sign of the mud. Even the gutters seemed to be regularly cleaned because there was no unpleasant smell coming from them. The complete lack of greenery, the overwhelming stoniness and the grayness of the buildings surrounding the team were a bit shocking. Identical windows, not even colored by curtains, looked at the newcomers from all sides. Before the guards became interested in the growing wet spot on the waterfront, Cyril herded everyone into the warehouse.
Sanja will find us a free place to stay. Tomorrow morning we'll explore the city.
The vampires smiled at each other. They hoped to complete half of their assigned missions by morning and the rest the following night. No attending balls, no tedious stalking. In accordance with the newly adopted RIDE principle in the Crystal Palace, reconnaissance, infiltration, doing, escape. However, Etienne had other plans.
Those who can camouflage themselves properly are invited to the nighttime hunt. The rest practice spells. Cyril organizes supplies. But before that, he takes us to a fancy restaurant for a dinner.
May I go with Sonia?
If you want. After you are done, find us and lead to our new apartment.
Cyril led the team right up to the walls. There, using the erected scaffolding, he slipped between the few patrols. His thoughts were with Jargon. Although he did not show it, he was worried about the fate of his only son, who had never ventured so far from home. The stuffy, house-filled spaces reminded him of the years he had spent in Tyrdam, the reality of a juvenile gang trying to stay alive at all costs. Although Tyrdam was not as dominated by guards in the past, Cyril still had a hard time getting food. His life at the time was filled with skirmishes with other outcasts, battles with the homeless for the few safe hiding places, and the eternal wandering from district to district, from an abandoned warehouse to someone's basement. In the past, he could traverse the narrow streets with his eyes closed and avoid hostile patrols. And now, he felt overwhelmed by the city's expansion. He had the impression that not only the guards were watching his every move, but also the nondescript buildings pressing in on him from every side. In the past, he sought solace in the night sky full of stars. The night was his respite, an escape from the daily struggle for survival. Now, he could hear the screech of drakes and the calls of winged riders overhead. He was glad that Jargon had stayed on the other side, that he hadn't risked exposing them and himself to the dungeons. That Cyril wouldn't have to search all the guard towers for the boy and beg for him to be released. He hoped that Jargon would be honorable and not look for the team that had left him, that he would return home, or, in the worst case, explore the desert, which seemed a very safe place compared to Tyrdam. Marigold wondered where the inhabitants of Tyrdam had gone. They met a few people by the river, but the darker it got outside, the more often they came across guards and the less often they came across ordinary passers-by. It was as if everyone was staying at home. In addition, there were no animals at all, not even cats hunting mice.
There are not many restaurants here and they operate during the days only. So, if you want to eat something warm, I recommend a tavern. But they won't allow us in unless we show them an entry permit.
Or my mind magic. Lead the way then.
They stopped in front of a stone building. The only difference was a guard standing in front of it and basement windows covered with curtains. It was quiet inside, as quiet as everywhere in Tyrdam. The guard didn't have a chance to ask about the permit. He was hypnotized the very moment he saw Etienne. Cyril thought that Etienne's magic was even more terrifying than anything he had seen in his life, that it was very useful, life-saving even, but still terrifying.
5 bottles of wine, 1 of juice, 4 chocolate cakes, and something warm for a dinner. It may be roasted poultry, or anything except of fish. Sooner the better.
The bartender looked at the group of tourists. So big order for only 3 adults and a child? He thought that the tourists, surprised by high prices of accommodation, sought shelter in the tavern. What was even more expensive?
20 silvers. Paid up front.
Etienne thought that it was a robbery, but before she started the discussion, Cyril paid for the meal. He said that Tyrdam had always been a very expensive place, hence lack of restaurants. They sat down on a stone bench. Everything in Tyrdam reminded Etienne of the Empire. Stone furniture, stone houses, lack of curtains. Vampires joined the team after half an hour, confirming that their first task was accomplished. Sonja took chocolate cake, Uzuma 1 bottles of wine, and Etienne mixed everything together. Omi took a sip of her juice, but it was awful in taste, so she took Tope's glass of wine.
I must say that it is not only the most expensive city I have visited, but also with the most awful food and cakes. Only the wine tastes as it should.
I agree with Etienne. Any of Sintra's restaurants is better than this place.
I suggest we take the wine and anything eatable from the plate and follow the vampires. I would like to rest a bit before our night adventure. Do the lodging have beds and other equipment?
Unfortunately not. You will see for yourself. We have checked few places and all look the same, abandoned and plundered.
Before Cyril said that it was typical for Tyrdam, Etienne left the tavern. The guard didn't mind it, as he was still under her control. The team walked through a part of the city and did not notice a single lawn. The entire space within the walls was carefully utilized, packed with buildings. They stopped in front of a building as gloomy as all the others. From the outside, it didn't look abandoned at all. The windows and roof tiles looked decent. The moss hadn't grown over the stones, and the steps looked like they had just been swept. When Cyril lived in Tyrdam, the number of cleaners there was equal to the number of guards. The survival of outcasts like him depended largely on the arrangements he made with the cleaners. While the guards dealt with lawbreakers and protected the city from bandits, the cleaners reported any deviations from the established order. They were the ones who wrote down dirty sidewalks, for which the owners had to pay fines. They were the ones who reported the hanging of curtains at home or other terrible offenses. They were also supposed to chase away the homeless people hiding in the cellars, but they could choose not to. Etienne's eyes turned gold. For a moment, she looked at the ground floor occupied by rats, then pulled herself up to the window by the ivy to look at the hanged man hanging from a hook on the first floor, whose body had already dried out. As if nothing had happened, Tyrdamese families lived, ate, and slept in the neighboring houses. Nobody showed any interest in the deceased. Nobody buried his body. Nobody even paid attention to the growing rat population, as if simple human curiosity had also been banned in Tyrdam, along with decency.
Clear the area and bolt the staircase. Don't open the front door. We're pretending we're not here.
At the sound of the bell, the few Tyrdamians still outside rushed to their homes. All the windows were closed, and the conversations died down. While waiting for the vampires to finish cleaning up, Etienne hid in the shadows, where she also pulled the non-magical members of the team.
I wonder how cruel the punishments have to be to force people to obey the law like that.
In Tyrdam, fines are almost the only punishment used. Only corruption and treason are punished with imprisonment. Many families have fallen into poverty because of a few minor offenses. One day you are late coming home, the next you get drunk in a bar, the third you have no money for bread. You steal and get another punishment. Until they take away everything of value and throw you out of the city in one shirt.
The simplicity, effectiveness, and ruthlessness of this solution made Etienne think about her own way of governing, about the concessions she made to the mages. What rules did Zuzu introduce? Were they right? Did they cause rebellions in the army? Maybe she chose 8's path, a preventive policy full of prohibitions? Rather than trading in privileges like Elstar, she sought support for her ideas.
Does it rain here?
Not in summer. It usually rains in Loi, in winter, and sometimes in spring.
It's ready, you can move in.
Take a look around. I'll join you in an hour.
Right after Etienne, Topes landed in the living room. And Cyril stayed downstairs, unprotected, unable to climb the smooth stone wall. Traveling with them reminded Etienne of struggling with Igni and her husband. They too knew nothing but swords and spells. It's strange that they didn't drown in the swamps. She guessed the 8 saved them. The headache that came with digging up more distant memories from the darkness of oblivion usually effectively discouraged Etienne from such searches. This time, however, the girl gritted her teeth and uncovered, fragment by fragment, the infamous training that Eternal had forced her to do. Her groans were accompanied by the wheezing of less resourceful members of the expedition who were pulling in the IV.
It would be useful to cover the windows, so that no one would see us during the day.
I will cover them with an illusion. The sudden appearance of the curtains will alarm the neighbors. Is that a carpet?
Etienne touched the fabric covering the entire floor. It seemed to be nailed to wooden supports, stretched over the entire surface of the apartment. Although old and in some places worn down to the bottom fibers, it still looked impressive. Even in the twilight of the city night, it was possible to distinguish the geometric patterns covering it.
In Tyrdam, wood is as expensive as it is in the desert. That's why the inhabitants mainly use stones and fabrics.
Won't it break off? And where's the furniture? A bed? Anything?
The walls, disfigured by vertical cracks, seemed to tell the sad story of the house being ransacked by the guard. Anything of value had been taken, including the plaster. If the carpet could have been torn off, they would probably have taken that too. A hook was sticking out of the ceiling, on which the owner of the house had been hanging until recently, and Etienne used it to hang up the washing lines.
I'll have everything done in an hour. But first, the beds.
Etienne concentrated on the vision of a furnished room. One bed for every person, one chest of drawers, and 2 shared wardrobes, plus a table, 4 chairs, translucent curtains at the windows. Using such a large amount of the magical substance caused the girl to end up on the carpet. From the perspective of the floor, she observed the appearance of further equipment.
Once upon a time, I built an entire castle from my energy only, and now a few pieces of furniture have deprived me of my power. Without my former body, I am just a book full of memories, spells, potions, historical events, a sad chronicle of research into the world around us.
None of the people in the room knew what to say in response to this confession. They watched in silence as Etienne knelt down, struggled to get up, and staggered towards her bag. How he took a reddish-colored mixture out of it, how he emptied the bottle and sat down on a worn-out carpet.
I once annihilated enemy armies alone, killed dozens of dragons, and even unnamed creatures from foreign worlds. Once, I fearlessly challenged the empire of the desert, and I won the war against them.
The quiet speech was interrupted by an even quieter laugh. Etienne remembered how Afi had declared her his wife, how they had sealed the peace treaty with a wedding that never took place.
Although I have fought when being completely powerless as well. All I had left were my angelic abilities and the elemental power. But then, Fidelus was by my side, a man as talented as he was scarred. Great swordsman, decent mage, and the best dancer I have ever met. My first husband.
She sighed, dusted off her dress soiled with dirt and mud, and walked to the window, taking only a few power crystals with her.
Don't take any unnecessary risks. I can't guarantee that I will save you no matter what. Of course, I will do my best, as always. It's just that I have much less power now. See you later.
She flew off in the dead of night. Umi ran to the window and managed to grab one of the black feathers that had escaped from the wings of the former ruler.
I wish I had wings too.
You wouldn't want that. I'm sure those wings caused her more problems than they brought her joy.
The feather dissolved into a trail of black smoke, as fleeting as the power that Etienne once wielded.
We should help her somehow.
Let's start by securing the quarters and getting some mattresses. You can't sleep on those.
I wouldn't be surprised if Ishan disagrees. I bet she'll show a lack of understanding for our remarks.
Nevertheless, we need to get drinking water and water for washing. It would be good to wash some clothes and clean our shoes and coats.